Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may happen to be, and whether you're watching live or archived. And welcome to another in the Nautel TTT webinar series, Transmission Talk Tuesday. That's me trying to get it right just on the test. We've got an interesting topic today. Everybody's been talking about Flash and it's going away, and what are we going to do, and why hasn't it been done? And I told him I was going to start the webinar by throwing him under the bus, but Matt Herdon's the product manager in charge of this, and he's been herding cats and doing all kinds of interesting stuff. And I also told him I was going to wait till this couple of slides in. So Matt, good to see you right on the ball, and welcome. Thanks for coming by.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
So we do have a couple of the usual housekeeping slides. Number one, we expect a lot of folks will have a lot of questions, comments, criticisms, and or concerns. There is a question window where you can type those in. There's also the little hand wavy icon where you can tap it and we can unmute your mic and let you ask your question live. Either one, whichever makes you happiest and is most comfortable. Nautel webinars do qualify for half a recertification credit under the category I of the SBE recertification schedule. So by all means, keep track of that as well. And with that said, we're going to start rolling. Of course, our agenda always the same, 100%. We do these Tuesday sessions as interactive as we possibly can. So we like to have your questions and comments in there. I see a few people I recognize in the audience, maybe more than a few, so I think we're going to have a little bit of fun. Matt, I'm going to put this up. I took this agenda from your slide deck, so tell me some stories here about today's agenda.
Okay, so as we all know by now, where are we going? We're going to HTML5. That is the big thing we're trying to get to. Why are we doing that? Well, first and foremost, Flash is reaching end of life. We all know that too. It's been an amazing platform, piece of technology for delivering a very rich environment up until now. But it dies at the end of the year, and that's the end of that for browsers. So the other really much more positive reason for going to HTML5 is multi-device access. Back about, I guess, 2015, we started investigating the different technologies that we could use to replace Flash. And we did consider other forms of apps, other game platforms and things like that. But by 2016, we were convinced that HTML5 was the right way to go. And so we started doing a bunch of user testing back then. And why is it taking so long? Well, the current AUI is big, really big. I think Jeff edited that. I don't remember writing that. It's really big, and it's evolved over years, you know, what, 9-10 years? And so it's an amazing piece of kit, and it's had a long time to do that evolution. And there's lots of pieces under the AUI that make it work. It's not just an interface. If it were just an interface, it would have been done a long time ago. And what do you need to know? Put the product guy on the spot. Okay, here I am. Anyway, so that's kind of where we're at with this.
Now, I'm going to interrupt. You did mention that, well, I mentioned and you regurgitated the old AUI is really, really big, but it's a lot of pieces that folks seem to not really be, I guess, as much aware of, that the AUI is only basically the surface dressing, if you will.
Yes. So to understand how it works, we have a transmitter, and that transmitter has a piece of hardware that will run an operating system. And so in the past, we've done those as we got to them. As we move forward, we want to have a single operating system that will run on all the platforms. So we have an extra layer that goes under that, which is the yellow one in this slide, which is the hardware abstraction layer. So that acts as a sort of a buffer between the real hardware and the operating system that thinks it's talking to a standardized set of hardware. The configuration, the little blue box, is what tells the operating system how to behave so that the data broker that lives above that can operate by providing the data flow to and from the AUI, to and from the transmitter up to the presentation layer, the UI. So there's quite a few layers there, and the next slide will give us a little more detail on how that plays out in the real world. So the important thing to bear in mind from our architecture point of view, and this is by design, is that we wanted to have the UI, the data broker, and the operating system to be common to all transmitters. It's one code base that gets deployed regardless of the model. And whether that's the current crop of ones, older transmitters that have the AUI like the NV, and then also any future transmitters that we build. We want to have them all standardized on these components. So the piece that's specific to each model is the hardware and the hardware abstraction layer and the configuration file. And you can see there in that diagram, it shows how the AUI, the data broker, and the operating system cuts across all of the models.
Now, my practical joker side says that I'm not sure about the acronym for hardware abstraction layer.
I'm sorry, but, Jeff, I can't do
that. Now, the cool thing about this, and this is the thing that kind of made me breathe a little sigh of relief, because I've got a little more inside information on where we are and where we're going than a lot of folks. But because there's so much commonality, even though it's taken forever to get rolling, once it starts, it should go fairly quickly. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so the first one that we're working on, and the people that have been in touch with us and inquiring, which has been many, know that the first beta will be the VS, and that was chosen for two reasons, and they sound like the same reason but backwards. One is it was the hardest one to do, so we did it first, and we also did it first, and as a result, it's the hardest one to do. So what that means is that we solve the hardest problems up front and we get it out of the way. It happens to be the biggest job because it's the first one we do. And all the ones after that will become much, much easier. And
right.
So once we've got that base, it's basically the hardware abstraction layer and the configuration that are really the different things. We'll do some fine tuning in the AUI and data broker as we go along and learn things. But the idea is to keep the commonality, but then do that extra work.
Right, right. So obviously, I mean, the goal is HTML5, and you've got quite a few benefits. I added the picture just because, yep. I mean, everybody's seen this by now. I think we've been showing it for years. So yes. Is there anything there you want to talk to?
So this photo and other information about the new HTML5 version of the AUI is on our support site, and you can find it pretty easily from the menu. But the technology benefits that sort of fall out of this is the robust maintenance of the code base. Anytime customers have come to us and asked for a tweak to the AUI in the current Flash version, it's become over the years, because of how old it is and the way the maintenance works, it's become harder and harder. Also, finding skills in Flash and things like that are bound to get harder as people upgrade their skills and go, I don't want to do that anymore. So robust maintenance is something that we benefit from here. Also, for you, it means that there would be easier and faster updates. So the architecture of an update will be much simpler than we've had in the past. It will be less monolithic. There'll be less downtime. So it'll happen faster. And the actual size of the code is much slimmer. And then moving into the next one, modern security. So Flash obviously is going away, and fundamentally on the basis of, hey, it's not a very secure environment because it can be hacked when it's inside a browser. And so this allows us to put in things like SSL and HTTPS and so on to increase the security robustness as well. And then, of course, AUI longevity. we want to make sure that what we've done lays the groundwork in a really solid way for maintaining the transmitters that we have today and then doing new ones as well. And so it allows us a great deal of flexibility as we move forward. And then last but not least is better performance. So typically the load that you get from the flash AUI right now is around about 9 megabytes. I think it varies a little bit between some models, but it's about 9 megabytes. And we're expecting to be a fifth or a tenth of that. So so that delay, a lot of people have said, who, especially people on satellite or something like that, they'll click go to launch their AUI and literally go and make coffee, come back, refresh the browser, and they're good to go. So better performance where you'll have to be a bit quicker about how you make your coffee in the future.
Right. Now, one thing Bill Putney has asked if the rework means that there will be a common MIB file for all the transmitters, and I think I can answer that insofar as there's still going to be, between the hardware abstraction layer and the configuration, some differences, especially AM to FM. But I mean, you're still dealing with different processors in the two different FM architectures, so I would assume there'd still be some differences in the MIB files as well.
Yeah, there are actually two parts to that that are important. One is I believe the MIB files will be still specific to the capabilities of the transmitter, which is actually a based on the limitations and features of the actual transmitter we're talking about. So I think the MIBs will reflect that. But it is worth realizing that the MIBs will all be new. So there, the old MIBs will not be the new MIBs. So so it's worth making a note to yourself that if you interact with your transmitter through SNMP, then you're going to need to do an update and grab the new MIBs and work through that. And we'll obviously make those available as soon as we can, so that you can start that work. But they will be different, and they will be different across the different platforms. We'll try and drive as much commonality as possible, but I'm not sure if the models will let us.
Well, and there are some aspects, for example, in one transmitter to another, a certain thing that you're monitoring may be presented by the exciter, in another it may be the controller. So the object identifiers would have to be different in that.
Exactly. The OIDs have a different structure to them by definition.
Right. So very good. Well, thank you for that. I did not put a picture in for this because every picture I could think of was somebody climbing a snow-covered mountain. But yeah, and just as a side note, when I was searching for snow-covered mountains, and I saw Shane Tobin in the audience, and he'll remember this, but back in 2008, Wyoming Public Radio had to access one of their sites in the middle of winter by horseback because there were 3-foot drifts over the road. So we're hoping not to put people in that regard. And what's your solution?
So, obviously the big question we have heard from a lot of you and is, what about now? Give me the solution as soon as you possibly can, because the end of the year is coming. You can all see it. And the end of the year is not really the end of the year. For so many people, at the end of the year is more like September, because the weather starts to go bad, high altitudes become inaccessible, and we know that. We've had these conversations a lot, and so the end of the year is kind of almost academic. So it's really about the access to the sites to perform the upgrades. If that were what you had to do. So what we decided to do was remove the problem, but not the symptom, in the great words of the Rocky Horror Show. And the solution is to do an AUI app. And what this app allows us to do is to continue to run the Flash AUI as it is today without any changes to the actual transmitter code at all, in a protected space, so that you can continue to just run the AUI, and you can go and uninstall and turn off the Flash player in your browser. So that's basically the solution.
So now, and because I am a little bit of a Luddite, as in spite of the field I work in, by app we're referring to like a Windows 10 laptop app, not a cell phone app, right?
Yeah, we actually have two versions of the app. One runs on Windows, and the other one runs on Mac OS X. And
Now, the cool
so,
thing about that is, so folks with Apple device or Apple computers who haven't been able to get Flash natively will have access.
yeah, actually, I run a Mac, and I've been able to do that for a long time. So
Awesome.
that's not a problem at all.
Good, good.
But
So
the
it is a simple
runs as a
installation.
desktop app.
Oh,
Yes.
good, good, good.
Shall I walk you through these?
Would you please?
Sure. So one of our team created a fantastic little wrapper that simplified the application installer for Windows, so that there are 3 components, and we're running a Flash app, so the Flash player still is part of this solution. So just let's be clear about that. But it's not in your browser. The second thing that is an enabling technology is Adobe Air, which is something from Adobe, which allows you to run desktop apps that run Flash. And this has been very popular for adding some longevity to the very popular millions of games, Flash games that are out there. So this allows you to do that too. Not our solution, but that technology, Air. And then there's an actual app. So we run this, and so it launches, it does some checks, asks some questions. There's a license agreement there. There's nothing earth-shattering there. So this is the beginning of it. The next step is to install Adobe Air. So if you want to click to the next slide, unless you've got questions. Adobe Air gets installed. If you've already got it installed and it's an older version, it'll upgrade it. If it's a newer version, it will just say, no, you already have a new version, and just finish. Otherwise, it'll just be a normal installation, and you'll have Adobe Air installed. And we can go to the next slide. It will then install Flash Player. Again, if it's already got it, if it's older, it updates it. If it's not older, it won't. By the end of the year, there'll be the last Flash player installed, and we'll just leave it at that. And it just stays permanently there. And then the last step is to install the Nautel app itself. And so you will get a warning that says that it's from a publisher that's unknown. But as long as you've got the app installables from us, then I believe you should be able to trust that, and go ahead and install that. And then at the end of it, it will have installed the application, and then you click continue, and we'll go to the next slide, I think, or
no, we're going to pause for just a second because
okay.
I can. So in the asking for a friend category, somebody, and I'll leave their name out of it because of the asking for a friend comment, will this install on Windows 7?
Apparently it does. One of my beta testers did install it. I think they had some slightly different error messages, which I can't test because I don't have a Windows 7 system. We had targeted 10 because of the burning platform that Microsoft has lit underneath of Windows 7, but apparently it does work.
Okay, now
Alex, that's my impression.
Alex Hartman is in the audience. I'm going to unmute Alex because he's done a lot of testing on this. And Alex, I'll get you to address that because you'd mentioned in the comments that it didn't work on XP. Is that correct? Let's see if Alex is even listening right now.
There I am.
There you are.
All right.
So,
yes. Windows 7 does work because Adobe Air was created for that environment already, and it just kind of migrated forward with Windows 10. However, on XP, that environment does not play nice. So Adobe Air officially doesn't support XP anymore. As such, we can't do anything about that. XP is long since dead, and they followed those trends. So 7 works fine. XP, hit or miss, you're on your own.
Right. Now, the cool thing, like you did build the little extractor file as
Yes.
well, and I've used that and it works great. But if you happen to be on a system where it doesn't work, or for whatever reason you're not able to download an exe, it's not that big an issue to install it piecemeal either. I've done that also.
Correct. Yeah, the installer is just there to put it all in the right order.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Alex. I'm going to be. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, in fact, the preceding slides, we had that overarching one, the first slide. If you ignore that one, then the steps of installing Air and then Flash and then this, those three are the things you do manually if you were to install it by the components.
Right, exactly.
And that's how it works when you're doing the installation on the Mac.
All right, and I'm going to mute Alex again. Thank you for that, and call on him in a moment or two. But so the other thing you've got is now we've got our installation complete.
Yes. And so you'll have that dialog that you see there on the left, and then the app will automatically launch as you complete that. And so you can see the app is there. The way that it works, and I don't know, do you want to share my screen now, or have you got some more questions before we dive into having a look at the real thing?
Let's do this now, folks. Understand that Matt's doing this live. If you accidentally see his IP address, please scrub it from your memory. And at that note, we're going to turn the screen over to Matt and see where this goes.
Okay, let's see. Do we want to show
Show me the one with your credit card number on it.
How's that?
Perfect.
Can you see a giant logo and a little app?
Yep.
So this is the app here. And what the app allows you to do is enter an IP address. It does not let you enter google.com or anything like that. So it will let you enter IP addresses and ones with ports on them as well. So that's what that does. I'm not going to enter the IP address because I've already done it over here. When you do that, he's very carefully moving his thing, because up in the top corner here off the screen that you can't see is my IP address. So you can actually see which windows you have open and which IP addresses they have. I'm kind of assuming you've probably got a call sign in here, but it's handy to know which one's which. If I typed another transmitter's IP address into here, it would open another window. And so you would be able to see that, and you can just keep opening windows. I don't know what the limitation, I haven't tried to push the limits. But this is the VS300 that I have in the basement of my house. As you can see, this is fully functional AUI, and it is resizable, and you can do whatever you want to do. So, there's no limits to, there's no license limits to how many instances you can create, as far as I know. There might be some physical RAM limits. And if you want, you can always minimize it as well. And so on, and that's basically it. It's a very, very simple app, and as I said, it runs on Windows and the Mac. It does not run on a phone because Flash doesn't run on phones at this point, and so we can't solve all of it. But it does mean that you get to run this, and probably the big question that people would have is like, for how much longer? Well, this app is something that should continue to work. And we're looking at, we want about a year and a half. So to the end of next year, that's what we really want, so that your transition to the HTML5 version is done on your terms and at your time, your timing. It's like, I think I'll go up the mountain and I'll do my switch over to HTML5 now. And you get to pick that time, as opposed to being forced to do it in the middle of winter or something like that. But in fact, we believe that this app has, probably several years of long life. We're going to try and make sure that you don't want to, by basically making the HTML5 one so much more attractive, and really encourage you from a support point of view to just get moved over.
Right. Now, I am going to break in. I've, of course, been having questions hitting the screen left, right, center, and sideways. Well, I don't know about sideways, but they're all over the place. I'm going to give them to you in the order that they pique my interest. And number one, from my interest point of view, was from Alex Brewster. And I say number one because I've asked this exact same question. Can you save IP addresses to auto-populate?
Not yet, but probably by the end of the week. So we are developing the ability to sort of remember the IP addresses, and they would, as far as I know, I'm leaving it up to the developer as to how they solve it. I gave him my user story, and there'll probably be a drop down that you can pick from most recently used IP addresses.
And that is another really valid point, not tied to any specific question, but this is being outsourced specifically so that we're not pulling our own resources away from HTML5 development. Is that accurate? And Matt may have frozen, or I froze. One of us froze.
Yeah, are we live yet?
There, you're good.
Okay, good. As a product manager, I sit about half and half between our customers and our development team. And my job is really to be a proxy for the customer. And so the last few months have made me nervous as I watch the schedule and hear about the problems that people will face. Well, actually more like 9 months. So because I have to worry about the things like site access. And so as soon as I realized that, we were at least skating on thin ice, my goal was to start look around and see what alternatives we had. And we specifically outsourced it so that absolutely had no impact on our development team at all. So HTML5 has just continued on and has nothing to do with this.
Good. Now, Alan Jerrison has asked if the desktop app requires a minimum version on the existing VS NVGV software, or will it work with any version of our software?
The app itself will work with any AUI that's out there in the field. I could be proven wrong by some sort of weird corner case, but I can't think of a reason not. The only reason that I would say that or the only note to make is that when it comes time to upgrade to the HTML5 version, we're going to recommend that directly before you do that, you upgrade to the latest version of your platform's software. The upgrade to HTML5 will be much smoother and better.
Well, and that's not uncommon. Anytime we do a major OS update, it pretty much requires that you launch from the previous version. Yeah. So you have to be current to that point. Now, two other people have asked a very good question. If you've got a dynamic IP address, you can't get a static IP. A lot of folks are using dynamic DNS lookups to get to their transmitter. Where this is IP access only, IP address only, how do you deal with that, or can you?
I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe Alex has something that he would want to add, but it's the only way that we could do this is essentially by typing in an IP address. And we specifically prevented putting in normal, like mytransmitter.com if you had allocated that to give you access. We specifically avoided doing that because under the wraps, there's a browser. Clearly, underneath this, inside this app, there's a browser. And we wanted to constrain the browser to not be something that people would be tempted to use for other things. The intention is it's for your Nautel transmitters only. And so we wanted people to sort of focus it that way. I don't know.
The easiest way to get around that for the audience paying attention is you can go do a DNS lookup on your dynamic DNS or dyndns.com, whatever. There's utilities on the internet that you can use to translate what its current IP address is and shove that in there. Yes, it's an extra step, but as Matt said, we wanted to make sure it was specific to the transmitter.
And that is one thing that Bill Putney has mentioned. You could ping the dynamic DNS name and figure out what IP you're pinging.
Correct.
There you go. Perfect.
We also did allow for port differences as well if you have multiples.
So David Creel has asked a two-part question. When can I get it and where do I go?
I'm hoping by the end of this month, and when we announce it, I will certainly put a link to it from the AUI page on support.nautel.com, and we'll probably, I imagine we might even do a press release and all that kind of stuff. So we'll make a bit of noise about it, and we'll make it easy to get. If you're interested in beta testing, I have versions of the app as it is right now that you can have. It's got a 14-day limit starting maybe yesterday. So you can try it out, see what you think. And if you've got feedback, I will be delighted to have it.
Now, one other note on that, and this is important to note because it's 100% installed on your laptop or desktop or wherever have you, it does not require a transmitter site visit to get to the transmitter to use this.
Correct. And you can install it as many laptops as you want. I mean, there's no licensing per anything at all. But yeah, it is as if you were going into a browser and connecting to your transmitter. It just happens to be through an app that protects your system and your browser. So yeah.
All right, and I know this is a loaded question, and I don't want to hold you to it because I know it's still under development. But what is the current beta time frame look like for HTML5? We're still a little ways away from that, yeah?
Yep. As some of you may have known, we really intended to have this done by NAB of this year, and we've been battered around by technological challenges, and we really want to get this right and have it just be absolutely bulletproof. We're getting through it all. It's just a lot of work, and we have a big team on it. Our expectation is to have a VS beta done by the end of this month, probably. But I don't like talking to the development team because they're just too busy. So that's the expectation. So if it's a little later than that, I'm sorry. But it's one of those things we're gonna get it right. And so what our hope is that this app buys you and us a lot more time and a lot more flexibility and less headaches and panic.
And I know that's one of the things that came up a lot in the development meetings was there was the option to do a fairly stripped down version of the AUI in HTML5, but you're literally talking 2 product releases at that point per transmitter.
Right, and so we realized that what we need to do is to do a real release per platform as soon as we can, and just commit to that, and that's what we're doing. We'll still have updates into next year and beyond as we make improvements based on feedback and things like that. But we want to make sure that we kind of want to make you an offer you can't refuse. We want to offer you an HTML5 that is so amazing that you kind of go, oh great, I am definitely upgrading. This does everything I want it to do. I am leaving Flash behind. Boom. And that's our goal, is to make it really pretty awesome. So yeah, we've set a high bar.
That is something else worth noting, that although we're not officially setting an end date for this app, once the HTML5 is out, at some point down the road, we are going to pull the plug on support for the app as well. So, somewhere in the next 3 or so years, it'd be a really good idea to do that.
Yeah, our support team doesn't want to kind of, in 2029 be answering questions like, oh, or answering the phone like, oh, which AUI are you running, the Flash one or the HTML5 one? That's painful. And the bottom line is that we're at the point pretty much already where if someone says, I need a new feature in the Flash version of the AUI, we would say, no, can't do it, won't do it. It's good money after bad. And so I think our goal is to really put all our investment in the new HTML5 version, because that's where it pays dividends for everybody.
Right.
Plus the fact, I mean, heck, you want to run it on your phone. HTML5 will do that for you. So you just open your browser and go to your transmitter, and it's going to be pretty fantastic.
Now, one other thing to note is that at the end of the webinar, there will be a survey that appears, and that survey, among other things, will include the option to sign up for beta testing for both the app and the HTML5 AUI. And I know you've got more than a few people signed up for HTML5 already, but having some folks beaten up on the app would also be a good thing. I mean, I've picked on it. I know Alex has picked on it, but more is always better than less.
Yes, I've got three customers who are beta testing it right now, and they've been successful. I've distributed it within the company, and I kind of get a sense of comfort when the response is, "Yeah, I installed it. It works."
Yeah, and I'm not sure whether I'm not sure whether to feel flattered or apprehensive that you picked me for it, because you said that I'll find a fault with just about anything.
And you did, but yeah.
I break stuff. Now, Kira Parker has mentioned that they currently have to upgrade the AUI and the XGen, their HD XGen, separately. And would HTML5 be a single package or still require dual installation? I can answer that one, Kira. It will still be dual, primarily because the XGen is part of an HD package, which is separate from AUI as part of a transmitter control system. So although the XGen is installed in the transmitter, it's really treated as part of the exporter-importer package than anything. One other one. Dennis Switzer wants to clarify that the app does have to be installed on any and all computers that he'd want to access the transmitters with, and that is correct, yes?
Yep.
Again, as you said, there's no limit on there's no limit on how many you install, but it does
basically I just put it onto a thumb drive like this one, and then install it wherever I want. So I have the Mac one and the Windows one on the thumb drive, and I just plug it in and we're good to go.
Oh, you need to talk to our IT manager about that, but that's a whole different argument. We were talking about IT security before this.
It's okay. It's got a Nautel logo on it. We're safe.
Oh, well, that makes it better. Okay, it's all good. Oh, Bill Putney mentions no remote software updates. His car gets them. And of course, Bill, you'll be aware that historically we've always avoided being the folks to push the remote updates, because if it crashes and bricks your transmitter, I don't want to be that guy that has to call you and say, "Hey, yeah, I know why you're off the air." No, that's probably not going to happen. Let's see. Go.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, some of the technology that we've used on the new HTML5 one does support that kind of thing, but it doesn't mean we're going to do it for exactly the reason that Jeff gave, which is that the responsibility for when to press the button has to lie with you, because you're the one who pays the price of bad things happening. So you need to be controlling your own destiny. Admittedly, if your car went sideways, that would be bad too. So, but I don't think
it's one of those, just because you can doesn't mean you should necessarily. Al Douglas was wondering if there is a feature list available for the HTML5 version yet. And the short answer is yes, but it's not for public release, and it's pretty lengthy, as I recall.
Yeah, it's mostly the AUI that you see today. I mean, there's going to be some tweaks. There's going to be some hard decisions we've had to make in terms of scope in the first version and what we would release in a subsequent release. But as far as functionality is concerned, it should be, we're shooting for a very high percentage of functionality. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do essentially a slide deck, and it's going to be a side-by-side of the various features and spaces. Why are you smiling?
I'm reading the questions. I'll get to that in a second.
Okay. I just had to check there. I could see a smirk growing, and I thought, yeah, no, I'm going to deal with this. That it'll be a side-by-side so that you can see the old AUI and where it is in the new AUI, so that you can quickly navigate to it. It'll have the, the little, the breadcrumbs to show you how to get there. So learning the new AUI will be something I publish as soon as I have, you know, the final UI, that I can then share that with people, and you can get to know the new AUI. Yeah, but I think as far as we're shooting for a high percentage in terms of feature coverage.
And going up a step or two, so here's your loaded question. This is the one where you buckle your seatbelt. This is the hard one that I was warning you would be asked. What's the time frame for all the beta releases at this time? You'd mentioned you were sort of targeting end of month for VS. How are you looking for NV Lite, NX, GV, NV?
What we've done is we're sequencing them because the team works pretty cohesively to sort of productize a particular model. And so once they're done with VS, most of the team will move on to, I think it'll be GV next. So we've got a sequence that we have in mind. I'm not going to say it out loud because it may change, but we basically have a sequence that will follow from that. It's really hard to sort of voice a particular schedule, but optimistically speaking, we expect there to be kind of like a number of weeks for the development work and then a number of weeks for the QA work. There can be overlap between development and QA because the QA team is separate from the development team. So you can see that how the Gantt chart will kind of accordion a little bit depending on how well things go. So the betas will sort of blast out there. But an important part of that will be to sort of be very clear about the feature set that's being made available, because I don't want people to feel the need to jump to HTML5 and then discover a feature they need or want a lot is not there yet, because moving back is going to be hard. Right. It's at least going to be a headache, and I don't want people to go through that. I'd rather you use the app and wait until you kind of go, it's got everything I need.
Right, and that'll be, I assume, typically handled through release notes as well, where you'll get a list of the things that are included.
Yeah, I'm looking for fairly transparent communications through that AUI page on the support site. So, you know,
and also for all the folks that have been growling about the AUI page on the support site not changing, that's the guy.
You're pointing in the opposite direction from me. If I point at you, it's like
there you go.
There you go.
That's the problem with
that is me. And you know, I figure if you got nothing to say, you got nothing to say. I'm not going to make some stuff up. So
very good.
And I've spent my time working on this, on getting this app sorted out, because I really felt that the urgency around that was higher than worrying about other stuff.
Yeah. Now, the reason for the smirk earlier, our head of customer support, John Wilton, is in the audience, and he wanted to know what you were drinking halfway through the day. I allowed as the fear factor was high enough. You're probably on the vodka and orange juice already. Ed asked him, Ed disembodied voice, who didn't get his thank you and forgot to put his picture up like he was supposed to, but he figured we were going to be serious, and he didn't know me that well yet, I guess. But he asked John if John wanted to be on. John said he's afraid. So, you know, some people just, yeah, you know, it's not like us.
And let's be clear, this is orange juice and water.
One other question, will the new AUI or HTML5 user interface let you update without using a thumb drive and load music remotely? Now, the music remotely, I know you can do with, well, you still have to have the thumb drive to store the music, and I don't think we're adding any physical storage to the transmitters, so that wouldn't change.
So yeah, if you think about how the AUI works and how it interacts with the transmitter, not a huge amount will change. We're not trying to reinvent the platform, as it were. So, but I think as far as software updates is concerned, as I kind of alluded to, we're hoping that the way that software gets updated will be a little more flexible, and you know, but until we actually go through it, I would be jinxing it if I said something like, "Oh, it's going to be fabulous." So I won't.
Yeah, Bruce Holman's asked if the HTML5 update would require reinstalling usernames, passwords, or any other settings, and I think I can answer that. It is a full operating system replacement, so the short answer is almost certainly going to be yes.
We may have a way of helping you sort of save some of that stuff and then re-import it. That's all TBD. So we'd like to make it as smooth as possible, but at the same time, we're not going to hold up the release for the sake of that.
Yeah, and Dan Griffin's asked how the interface will look, and I assume talking about the AUI 5. We did we do a webinar on AUI 2 or the HTML5 AUI a while back?
We did an update at the virtual NUG, and that is recorded. I think it crashed halfway through because my internet or something.
Oh, right.
Right in the middle of that. But I think we got to see a little bit of it. I'm hoping that then within the next few weeks, I'll be able to do an update and, maybe a webinar, maybe just a recording that I make available. Because I think the time is...
Maybe we'll bring you on for early October for another Transmission Talk Tuesday.
That would probably work really well, yeah.
Yeah. So the short answer to that one, Dan, stay tuned, and we'll certainly try to keep you updated. Let's see, another one from Bill. For the most part, after the AUS works for AUI, the HAL and configure the only parts that have to change to move it to the other transmitters. And that's accurate. That goes back to the slide with the showing the different configuration stacks.
Yeah.
So model to model, yes, the hardware abstraction layer and the config files are the only things that are different from one to another.
Yeah. They're the big work. As far as the development works, we may, as we dig into GV or NV or NV Lite or NX, discover a few intricacies that are an additional bit of work where we got to extend the UI, we got to extend the data broker to support some additional data sets. Yes, that will happen, but the vast majority of the work in productization is the config and the HAL.
Let me join in on that one there just a second. Having the HTML5 is great, but yes, it does go back down to the hardware abstraction. The HTML5 and the data broker need to know what it is installed on. Is it on a GV? Is it on a VS? Is it on an NX? Because on an NX, you need the Smith chart, but you don't on a VS. So it has to be able to present the proper tools to the proper transmitter it's attached to. So not only is that, they're all cohesive. So the HTML5 interface has to ask the hardware and the broker, what am I doing? So that gets a little bit more involved from a programmatic standpoint in the background, and that's kind of a heavy lift.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Alex. Bruce Holman's asking, this would be a good feature requirement. Would the HTML5 version give you a log of user logins? Sometimes it would be nice to see who has accessed the transmitter. So that's not part of the current feature set, which means it probably won't be part of the first release of the HTML5 feature set, but definitely somebody who is a product manager should be taking notes and writing stuff like that down.
Yeah, I'm going to use my Nautel pen.
Awesome.
To write down that as a feature request. So it's a login log.
Right. And David Creel said the transmitter should add the latest software before installing HTML5. The HTML upgrade will include the whole OS. Is this correct? And that is correct. Now, quantify that. The first HTML5, you remember when you went from version 2. whatever to version 4. whatever, that was an OS replacement. And the version 4. had the full OS. You had to download the ISO and unpack it onto a USB stick if you're on a VS, or into a laptop if you're running on one of the other boxes. So yeah, at least the first time you'll be downloading the whole OS, unpacking it, and doing a full OS recovery process. After that, it would be a standard update, like going from version 4.3 to version 4.4. And I made up some versions there, but that's the concept. So
and we might reasonably expect that since it's HTML5, that there's a good chance that the actual amount of software that gets to update the AUI from one version to the next might be a little skinnier as well.
Right. And do you expect the new AUI will work in all transmitters of the same model without hardware upgrades of any kind, no matter their age? And that's actually part of the design criteria, Kira, that we have to be able to run this on everything that has flash-based AUI without any hardware changes. Now, that's not to say, like on the older NVs, for example, the single board computers used in those have been out of production and unavailable for quite a few years. So there is a field mod to replace that with a different one that does require a little hardware change, but something like that still stays the same. As far as the AUI upgrade, it shouldn't matter though. That accurate, Matt? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, and where you can help us is if you've got transmitters that you think are a little unusual or a potential edge case, then, you know, and you're able to do a beta test, then, you know, you can sign up for the beta and offer that transmitter to do that.
I know Kira's with Vermont Public Radio, and some of their sites make inaccessible a poster child. So I'm not 100% sure that I'd want to volunteer any of hers for a beta, but
well,
yeah,
there you go.
Now, two people have asked if the transmitter can email a set of readings once a day, and this is something I know I'd requested before as a potential feature improvement. You know, the ability to take logs like transmitter readings on a predetermined basis and then email them
like every
daily,
3 hours, yeah,
or whatever, yeah. So
I think in Rev 1, no, but we've certainly had that requested, I think, by you and Alex, who have pointed out that it would be incredibly valuable, I think, from a compliance point of view. And in fact, we were thinking of calling it the compliance report. And so we have a placeholder for it in the UI. And so we would like to do that. I don't think it's going to be in the first release because we're not looking to add scope.
right.
Yeah, I believe it's roadmapped right now.
Yeah, and something else to add to your feature list, can the AUI send email for successful or attempted logins? That'd be a really good security feature. So
adding to my list.
Yeah.
That would go back to authentication logging, I'm sure.
Okay, Dan's asked if we can show some different screens and menus actually working, but with respect to the HTML5 AUI, that's kind of out of the scope of this presentation. Dan, the short answer there is come back next month and we'll absolutely show you screens and menus working.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to hold Matt to it now. He agreed.
To jump back to the scope of this one here specifically about the app is you've got to remember, guys, that the Flash program of AUI is actually downloaded to your local machine through the browser. So what you're seeing here on Matt's screen is actually when you access AUI, it pulls down that Flash app and then runs it locally and then queries the transmitter back and forth. So that's what you're seeing as a display. So this was the point of this app specifically, was to not lose that functionality past, you know, well, like I said, it's snowing in Wyoming right now. Nobody's going to upgrade before the end of the year in Wyoming, or Kira for that matter in Vermont, like you said, the poster child for unaccessible sites, or even in Hawaii where a helicopter is usually your only mode of transportation. So things like that are kind of why we're here today. Not necessarily to figure out what HTML5 is going to have, but here is the way you're going to work with the transmitter for right now while we polish the HTML5 in the background and get that, as Matt put, just right, and get what you need out the door first. So with that, like I said, I wanted to reiterate, this is Windows and Mac. I know there are certain people out there who have started using Chromebooks. Chromebooks are based on Android, which Android is based on a phone, which means it won't run this either. It must be a full-blown Windows machine or a Mac.
Another thing that you had pointed out, Alex, is that which is by design, is that when you shut this down, it doesn't remember anything. The only thing that probably will be remembered in the long run will be when we add the feature to remember the IP addresses, and that will be written to a text file or something.
Right. There is no cache hiding in the background. Like, you know, us in customer service have told you to remove browser cache if you get the timeout login stuff. That doesn't happen here. It's a run once, terminate once. There's nothing hiding in a temp file.
Once you shut it down, it's gone. And to sort of the flip side of that is that if you close it, this window, and then you want to, oh darn, I need to do something else, it's going to do the same load again. So if it takes 30 seconds to load that AUI flash from your site, it will take another 30 seconds to do that, because it's not remembering anything, it's not caching anything. So and I could go in and type in the IP address for the same transmitter, and it would load, and each time it does that, it's in a separate space, if you like. So it's going to do a full load.
It's a separate instance for every option or every instance that it does. So every time you load it, it's a different thing. Even if you're connecting to the same transmitter, it will not share the AUI download from the transmitter. It's going to do it by itself.
Right.
Good. All right, we are coming close to the top of the hour. Oh, Dan Griffin has made a comment about the emailing readings. So back to your notes. If the transmitter emailed readings on a regular basis, he wouldn't have to remote into it every day. So
that's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Cutting down his workload.
We totally get the need for it. It's a very good feature.
Yep. Alex Brewster's asked if multiple users can log in at the same time. Like if I had two different people on two different laptops, each with the app installed, could they both hit the transmitter at the same time? I think the short answer is if they can do it now, they'd be able to do it with the app. Is that accurate?
Totally. Yeah, there's absolutely no limits. The limit at that point becomes what the transmitter can do, not what the app's doing. The app is separate from the transmitter. So if you're dragging your transmitter down by loading it up with users that are logged in and grabbing data and doing things, then I imagine you might reach some sort of limit.
Well, I know the VS at one point anyway had a 3-user limit. I'm not sure if it still does. I don't remember, but irrelevant. That's a transmitter limitation, not an app limitation. Right. So yeah. So yeah, if you had a limit before, you're still going to have it.
Yeah, but the app, install wherever you want, run it as many times as you want.
Sure. Here we go. Mike Martin. Hey, Mike, how you doing out there? Mike's just a little bit south of Alex down in Winona, Minnesota. Mike wants to know, will the app work with other flash-based equipment or just Nautel transmitters? And I think I already know that answer.
If you've got the IP address for something that runs flash, then you could certainly try it. We don't endorse it, we don't support it. But,
oh no, absolutely. If John Wilton's still listening, John, I'm going to tell Mike that when he doesn't update his Comrex access and get rid of the flash in it like he should have done several months ago, then I'm going to tell him to call Nautel customer service, tell him the app doesn't work.
If you're on the beta test and you're testing your transmitters and you happen to do something and it happens to solve other problems and world peace as well, then we are delighted to hear about the good things that happen.
Well, and you know now if you go to nautel.com and click the support tab, there's going to be a big flashing red screen that says if you're having problems with the AUI app, here's Jeff Welton's cell phone number.
One of the things that might be a good question was that, and we don't want to add more features. We don't want to scope creep this either, is that we had the one idea was to actually validate the IP address and sort of check whether it's actually talking to an AUI. So we could do that. We don't really want to. It just adds expense and time to the whole basis. But if people think that that's important, it sounds like if you want to approach a Comrex, then yeah, the answer is no. No, leave it the way it is. It's perfect. If there's...
And I think for the vast majority, I mean, the only ones I know, Bob Tarsio did a little update recently about BDI and their flash-based gear. I know Comrex has already taken care of flash in theirs, so So certainly, if there's anybody else that's struggling with Flash, then let me know, or we'll play with it to the best of our abilities. But no, we won't promise support on it. Absolutely.
And one of the things I wanted to say, which is at a higher level, which is, you know, we truly appreciate everyone's patience. We know that this has been a hard road. We have worked day and night and for many years now to get to the HTML5 solution. And we wish it could have been done last year. That was our goal. Our stated goal was to have it done before the end of 2019. It turned out that it was a much bigger, harder problem than that. We now believe strongly that we have our arms fully around the problem, and that we have solutions that are coming, and that really this app is here to sort of soften the blow as we get really close to the end of it, and take away any of the concern and worry that people were being passed on to me were expressing. It's like, yeah, we know this is a problem. Here's a solution, and
right.
you know, we hope that this covers every case that is causing problems, and but we totally appreciate your patience and being part of this.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm going to take control back at this point of the screen, and we will flip over. Joseph Rother just asked if it would be available, if the webcast would be available for download or streaming later. And Joseph, the very short answer is it will be archived on our YouTube channel. If you go there and go to YouTube and search Nautel, you should be able to find it pretty quickly. As a rule, Ed gets things archived either late tonight or tomorrow sometime. Give him a little bit of time. He has a life and family too, so we don't want to push him too terribly hard because, like I say, he's the disembodied voice behind the scenes that makes everything happen. On that note, here's the URL for the YouTube channel, as well as you'll be able to get to it through our webinars page. Fiona tells me we've got a Waves newsletter coming out in a couple of weeks. Maybe Matt will be addressing that AUI HTML5 in there a little bit, or the app at least, with any luck at all. And on that note, we're 3 minutes past the top of the hour, folks. I want to thank you very, very much for your time. Certainly, if you've got any questions, reach out to any one of us, info@nautel.com, support@nautel.com, or me or Matt directly if you happen to have our addresses. If you don't, we're more than happy to share. Thank you again and have a wonderful day. And Matt, thank you very much for spending the time with us today, and Alex,
you're welcome.
In the background.
It's a pleasure to show off other people's work.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Alex. Thanks, folks. Have a wonderful day.